Good afternoon, I'm Mario Becker, the CEO of Das Family Office, a Singapore-based multifamily office. And in the following video, I describe the events that I could witness in the late 90s, and I'm looking to contrast them with what we're observing now as a recovery of COVID. We've seen a major bull market in many ways. It reminds me a lot of the late 90s. And I feel some of the millennial traders can benefit from what we've gone through as millennium traders. I hope you enjoy the video. Although I started buying my first stocks already in 1990, what I could witness in the late 90s, the period from about 97 until early 2000 was nothing I had ever seen before. It was unbelievable, especially what happened on the Nasdaq 100 index, which went up several hundred points just in a few years. In those days, I spent an incredible amount of time researching companies. Companies from obviously the tech sector, but there were also new energy stocks, but there was also Starbucks coffee, a coffee shop that I had first met in New York in 1995. All sorts of companies, and I really tried to get my head around this by reading up on pretty much everything I could get my hand on. At the same time, technology wasn't as advanced as today. I still had to put my stock orders through a telephone booth. And I had to be careful that I didn't spend too much money because a simple phone call could easily cost $5 at the time. Obviously, we were really expecting massive change from ordinary telecommunication to mobile telecommunication. We were told about network PCs. We were told about how everything would very much develop the way we're now experiencing it. Streaming videos, working from home, everything was more or less expected then, but we didn't work like that. And so we were in awe as to what would come in the future. There were browser wars. Can you imagine? In those days, there was a browser called Netscape Communication, which effectively opened the internet to all of us. And then came Microsoft with Internet Explorer and tried to squash that. At the same time, what was really exciting for us as stock traders, all of a sudden there were online brokers that would offer stock trades for as little as just a couple of dollars, as opposed to typically 1% commission, which we would have to pay then. Crazy amount. Nowadays, nobody would ever pay 1% for a stock trade. But as the older ones of you have experienced, in the short term, the financial markets are more like a voting machine. Everybody puts down his vote, everybody buys and sells what she expects to go up. And that's also what we did as millennium traders. Obviously, since the context was all about the upcoming mobile communication, we bought stocks like Nokia, Ericsson. But even then, we were already looking at alternative energies. We were looking at ballast power for hydrogen-powered cars. We were already looking at Vestas wind systems for windmills. But the ultimate stock that all of us loved and the stock that nobody could escape from was basically Cisco Systems. When I started my traineeship at Deutsche Bank in Hanover, my colleague actually told me, Mario, you have to buy Cisco Systems. This is your pension stocks. Your pension money should go into Cisco Systems. But at the same time, in the long run, the stock market is not a voting machine. It's actually a weighing machine. It's weighing the company earnings versus the company share price. And as a matter of fact, only companies that have consistently growing earnings will see a consistently growing share price. So what happened to the darlings of ours? If you look at Nokia, you look at Ericsson, look at Vestas, look at ballast power, none of the share prices have seen the peak which they have seen in the early 2000s. Most of them are pretty much now a shadow of themselves, of those expectations. And some of the dreams didn't work out. And most of all, Cisco Systems, the stock that was meant to be my pension money, actually hasn't even reached the share price of the early 2000s. I mean, it's not dead, but it's also not giving me a great pension. But luckily, I don't own it anymore. Also have a look at the graveyard of us millennium traders. You look at companies like WorldCom that everybody heard of, or Motorola, Nortel. Then there's a company called Learnout and Houseby, which was meant to be a market leader in speech recognition. But they actually did balance sheet fraud and went bust quickly, so it didn't happen. But that said, all of us were effectively winners. Who are the winners of all these developments? It's effectively society, because we're now enjoying all these benefits of mobile communication, of Wi-Fi, broadband, everything. And on top of that, there have been companies benefiting from this. They were not necessarily Cisco System and the companies that we expected to win. There were other winners. And all of these winners are reflected in the broad-based stock markets. So the investors, the boring people in the broad-based stock markets, they are actually doing very well for themselves. Despite the crash of the early 2000s, investors in the Nasdaq 100 could earn handsomely. The same goes for investors in the S&P 500, or investors in the MSCI World, or MSCI World Small Cap, or Global Emerging Markets. Now let's see what's happening at the moment. Recently, my intern told me, Mario, yes, I hear you talk about 7 to 8%, but for my generation, that is not enough. So what is his generation looking at? He's clearly a millennial, and he's looking at cryptocurrencies. He's again looking at clean energy, and even more so than how we looked at it in the past. I think there's a better understanding of urgency here. He's looking at discount brokers like Robinhood in the US, Trade Republic in Germany, that now don't seem to charge anything. While we went from paying 1% to paying a couple of dollars, this generation is not expecting to pay anything for a stock order. But as I guess we know, nothing is for free. If something is for free, you will still have to pay in one way or the other. And now, what does the voting machine of the millennials look like? They're looking at iShares Clean Energy. This is the name I hear over and over again. I hear of an actively managed ETF called ARKK, ARK Innovation. It looks like a great idea, but none of the stocks is earning anything. They're all dreams, hopefully dreams that will come true, but at this moment, these are dreams that are not supported by cash flows. Then some of the familiar names, Vestas, Wind Systems and Ballard Power are back. Even the millennials like it. Then there are some interesting phenomena like GameStop, which I think nobody really understands. And BlackBerry has come back from the death. I mean, maybe it's still more or less a zombie, but the millennials love it. And the ultimate stock, so to speak, the pension stock of the millennials, that is Tesla. This is the company that seemingly cannot fail. And it looks like everyone is prepared to bet on Elon Musk and the future he's promising. I mean, he's truly exciting, but yeah, this is the pension stock of the millennials, Tesla. Well, unfortunately, I guess even the millennials will have to understand that in the long run, the stock market will reflect continuous profitability of a given company. So if Tesla will deliver on all of these promises, the stock will certainly do well in future, but nobody knows the future. And why worry about this if history can rhyme, right? We can just buy broad-based indices, and we know for sure that they will always reflect the best companies. So let's look at Nasdaq 100 in future. Let's look at the MSCI World Small Cap, the MSCI World in all its different variations, and also MSCI Emerging Markets. I think we can rightly assume that these indices will do pretty well in the long run, as they have done so in the past, despite the Millennium craze. Now I leave you with some famous last words of the uncles as I describe it. The rule number 1 of Warren Buffett is, don't lose money. It took me a long time to understand this quote, but I think I'm now getting my head around it. So don't lose money, and rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. And I think this rule is so important is because often, and I can vividly remember my past, sometimes you just punt and you don't care if you lose money. But in all honesty, if you start losing bigger amounts of money, it takes much longer to recover, and over time, you're not getting ahead. So why do it? Just look into investments that from the outset will most likely not lose you money, so you will always get ahead. Then another quote I love from Jack Bogle, a man I truly admire. He's the founder of Vanguard. Unfortunately, he's already passed on. But he says, why chase the needle in the haystack if you can buy the haystack? I think this is probably really the best approach for most investors. Buy the haystack, buy the broad market, buy a broad index, and you will do very well. And then a quote which is something that I would more or less like to write down, that you can really assume that the market will always reflect companies' earnings. So you can really trust the market. Don't worry about the next crash. Don't worry about being too early or being too late in the game. In the very long run, the market will always reflect the good companies of a given country, a given society, a given sector. So trust the market, dare to trust the market. And last but not least, this I think is probably the most important message today from me to the millennial traders is, I think I can almost guarantee that some of you will see losses. It's inevitable. I've seen it in the past. I've seen it myself. And I would say I'm really glad that I managed to stand up again, that I didn't turn my back on the equity market, that I didn't say equities are not for me. I know there are people out there who've had family where somebody lost money in stocks and they're now traumatized for generations. They only stay with cash and they don't dare to get into the market, and they don't earn the equity risk premium in the long run. So if any of your passion trades, your visions, the beautiful ideas that you've heard and that you invested in, if any of these don't work out for you, please don't turn your back on the market. Markets can really give you equity risk premium of 6 to 8% in the long run, even if that's not enough for my current intern. But if you compound any given amount of money at 7 to 8% each year, you will reach very high numbers. And these are numbers that will make your pension safe or make your portfolio look great. I hope you liked this video. We will post more such videos, so please like our channel, please subscribe to our channel, and all the best to you.